Welcome to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, bringing baby boomers proven strategies and innovative products for getting fit, staying fit, so you can live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Here's your host, best-selling author and fitness advocate, Phil Ferris.
This is Phil Ferris, and welcome to our show. Never Too Late for Fitness Radio provides answers and straight talk about fitness, nutrition, and healthy lifestyles for people over 50. During each show, we talk to real health and fitness experts solving real problems with proven solutions you can apply in your day-to-day life. Today, we're going to talk about mental training for older athletes. Today's guest is Lawrence Klein, co-founder and VP of Thought Technology Ltd, which was founded in 1975 and is the world's leading biofeedback, neurofeedback, and psychophysiological instrument manufacturer. Over 10,000 Olympic athletes and professional athletes have used the biofeedback equipment, resulting in 5 Guinness World Records, many Olympic gold medals, and countless personal bests for competitive athletes and weekend warriors. Thank you, Lawrence, for being here today.
My pleasure.
Well, Lawrence, just so our listeners can fully appreciate the unique perspective that you bring to mental training and fitness, can you share a little bit about your background and your company and how it helps athletes improve their performance?
Sure. First, we enable athletes to look inside and amplify the changes that are always happening within their bodies, but that they're unaware of. It's called biofeedback or psychophysiology. So by amplifying these changes and showing it to them either on a screen or with a tone, they can kind of reach inside their bodies and self-regulate. And that is a very important skill, which we'll cover during this talk. I taught a season for Ernie McCullough at Mont Tremblant. His nickname was the King. He was the best skier on the planet for well over a decade. And I pursued an education in psychology from Dalhousie University. And then I started Thought Technology with a high school buddy, Dr. Hal Myers, who at the time was doing a doctorate at McGill University in experimental medicine. That was 43 years ago. In 1974, I had a friend who became BPRO, the Base Physical Education Recreation Officer at St. Hubert Air Force Base on the South Shore of Montreal. And as I just started the company, we ran every morning 6 miles, 6 days a week. And we did that for 5 years. So we did it 1,500 times. Major Nori Latteroot became the head of combat training for the Canadian Armed Forces, but that was after those 5 years. That was before Nike was making running shoes, and perhaps maybe a couple of thousand people would run the Boston Marathon. So that was before running was really the craze that it is now. I wanted to take biofeedback skiing, so I suggested to Nori that, everybody who races in skiing side slips and memorizes it. What if they memorized it in a deep state of relaxation? Would it be more powerful, and would they be quicker? So he said, good question. Let's go see my buddy, Dr. Dan Marisi, head of sports psychology at McGill University. But he wasn't captured by the question, actually until 1990 when he started training the Canadian men's Olympic alpine ski team. But by that time, Nori and I had trained the Canadian women's downhill team 1982 to 84, and many of them had many World Cup victories.
Wow, that's a great story. So, it started way back then, and you've been doing it, for over 43 years. What I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about mental training and why it's so important for athletes who want to perform at their best.
Well, everybody's got a training routine, a physical one. But how many people have a mental routine? You'd be surprised. It's growing, but it's growing pretty slowly. So we want to give people the tools so that they understand that they can actually enable themselves to train themselves mentally. There's 5 really important skills that I'm going to cover in this talk. The first is breathing. That's where the involuntary and voluntary meet. And then I'll talk about visualization and how to use your mind. We'll cover deep relaxation and how to use it, how biofeedback and psychophysiology fit into that, and then being positive, being your own best friend. So to start off, I'd like everybody that's listening right now, I want you to take a very deep breath, okay? Like you're going to dive into a swimming pool. Okay, do it now. Tell the truth. Did you breathe in or did you breathe out? When I do this in person, virtually everybody breathes in. My buddy, Dr. Eric Pepper of San Francisco State University, taught this to me. He always asks people, how can you breathe in if you haven't made space for that air by exhaling? So you have to start every breath cycle by breathing out. What he does is he tells them to take their hand and place it over their tummy, their belly button, and gently press in for 6 seconds. Then allow your tummy to relax, and your diaphragm falls, and gravity takes care of the in-breath. That takes about 4 seconds. So 6 seconds out and 4 seconds in is about 10 seconds, which gives you about 6 breaths per minute. That's called diaphragmatic breathing. Some people who practice yoga will recognize it as yoga breathing. It will assist you to relax as when you exhale, your heart rate slows. But as you breathe in, your lungs fill and your heart accelerates to spread that oxygenated blood to your hands and feet. Imagine if you're breathing 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, your heart rate is accelerating and decelerating. Let's say your average is 70. So your heart accelerates to 75 and decelerates to 65, average is 70, right? However, if you're breathing out for 6 seconds and in for 4, your average is probably 68 because you're breathing out for 1/3 longer than you're breathing in. This is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, also heart rate variability, or simply HRV. Listen, your heart is a muscle, and you never want it to completely relax because, well, that's called death. But heart rate variability gives your heart an opportunity to recover, and it's very useful. If you're playing hockey or basketball or doing other episodic maximal efforts, it's really important to allow your heart to decelerate, to settle down, and to relax on the out-breath.
Okay, so that's breathing. You said the second skill was visualization. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing. Everybody can visualize. In fact, I'm going to give you an actual experience right now. In your mind's eye, let's say that you're not driving your car or doing something you have to attend to closely. Okay, in your mind's eye, go to your refrigerator in your home, open it up, and take out a lemon. Take it to the chopping board, slice that lemon, pick it up in your hand, take a deep breath. You can smell that lemon, and now put it in your mouth and take a great big bite. You're probably salivating right now. It's a universal effect. And so this power of visualization or imaging is really important because think of it. If you're actually practicing on, let's say, the soccer football field and you're kicking penalty kicks, how many can you kick? Well, if you're on a team with 25 others, 5, 10, maybe. But visualize, well, you can do 20, 50, 100. Not only that, but everyone is perfect. Everyone actually arcs perfectly in. In fact, to tell you a secret, AC Milan, one of the world's largest football clubs on the planet, the guys go into the mind room where we have our biofeedback equipment, and when they're lying down and visualizing, the sports psychologist can actually tell them which leg they're kicking with, because your muscles fire. Even if you're lying there completely still, you can actually see on our instrumentation when you're visualizing which leg you're kicking with.
So there really is a mind-body connection that you can measure, and that's probably one of the powers of biofeedback.
Absolutely. In fact, we're measuring 1/10 of a millionth of a volt. So we can teach people who are paralyzed to walk again. And in fact, that's one of the very important applications, because, we're a medical instrument manufacturer, and 95% of our sales are medical to tens of thousands of hospitals in 85 countries. So this is an important application of our instrumentation.
Wow, that's powerful. Now, going back to your 5 skills, the third one you mentioned, I think you said, is deep relaxation. How does that come into play?
Well, it's really funny. This was all par hazard. It was like happenstance. I had a buddy, Dr. Rishi Kumar Pandya, a medical hypnotist, and whenever he was teaching the RCMP, that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, how to use hypnosis, because they want to be able to put people under so that they could remember license plates or things, details of a crime scene or something like that. So Rushi would go in there, and if there was a space, he'd ask me if I'd like to attend, and I did. And he would use a kind of hypnosis, I call it a trick, but it's really the foundation of hypnosis, called post-hypnotic suggestion. He'd say to the audience, he'd explain how it works, and that he wanted to show the power of hypnosis. He'd say, when I say the Russians are coming, you're going to see its power. So then he'd put the class under hypnosis, and he told everyone, when I say the Russians are coming, you are going to feel the irresistible urge to take your watch off your arm and put it on the other arm, but you will not remember why you did it. So on awakening, he went back to his lecture, and he's in the middle of the lecture, it would come, the Russians are coming, and this one officer in the front row took his watch off and put it on his other arm. Well, Rushi stopped his lecture and said, excuse me, sir, could you tell me why you took the watch off and put it on the other arm? He said, it feels more comfortable on that arm. And then Rushi went back to his lecture, and he kept on dropping in the words, the Russians are coming, completely out of context, of course. And each time he did that, the officer would take the watch off and put it on the other arm, and he would make another excuse because Rushi would ask him, excuse me, I just noticed you did that. So there's the power of suggestion. Since I was running the airbase with my buddy Nori every morning, I described these effects, and I said, what do you think? Would you be quicker through the race course if you memorized it or visualized it in a deep state of relaxation than in a normal waking state? And when we went to Dan Marisi at McGill University, he shook his head and he said, good question. I have no idea how to test it. Well, Nori and I had the opportunity in Valcartier with 24 biathletes. You probably know that biathlon is cross-country skiing and shooting. Now, cross-country skiing, your heart rate's at about 180. Shooting, you want it below 60. And these guys would have a hanging heart rate. They wouldn't get slow quickly enough, and they couldn't hit the side of a barn door. They were in 27th place. So we took them, marched them into the gym, and had them number off 1, 2, 1, 2, because they're military. They follow orders. And we said, okay, 1's forward, 2 back. So we put them in 2 different groups. We flipped a coin to see half would get the real biofeedback devices called the GSR2. That's galvanic skin response. We nicknamed it the Great Stress Reliever. And so they'd hold it in their hand. Half of them got real GSR2s where when they were stressed, the tone would rise, and as they relaxed, the tone would fall. And half of them got fixed tones that would just emit a low hum. We kind of fixed them electronically, so they would work, but just not change at all. And they were given 6 words of instruction: do mentally what you do physically. The half that had working units got so much better that after 6 weeks, the half that got the fixed tones marched in and mutinied, saying, "This is fixed against us. We're in the losing group, and either you give us the real deal or we quit this test." So statistically, highly unlikely that every second guy was a dud, but we decided, okay, we'll go along with it. We gave them the B group, the A condition, and they came up equal to the first group, so that we knew we really had a powerful effect. And by the way, they went from 27th place to 2nd place. Wow. So the Mind Over Muscle program comes with 2 cassettes, and on the first cassette is the actual process that takes you through a relaxation exercise, and then takes you to your playing field where you can visualize your sport.
All right. Now so we've got breathing, visualization, deep relaxation. What are the last 2 skills that you want to talk about?
Well, psychophysiology or biofeedback, that's the tool that's going to get you into that state of deep relaxation. Because if you take your computer and hammer on the keys, 24 hours, you're not going to change the function of it. But if you put them in hit the keys in the right sequence, it's called programming. And you can program your computer to perform the skills that you want it to. To program your body, you have to get it into a deep state of relaxation. You can do it with biofeedback from galvanic skin response. You can use peripheral blood flow, which is measured by temperature, or you can look at heart rate variability. So we have a GSR2, GSR Temp 2X, or the eView TPS, which is just released about 6 months ago, and that works on an Android phone by Bluetooth, and you put it on your finger, and it sends it wirelessly to your iPad or smartphone, and then you can see your skin conductance, your temperature, and your blood volume pulse, which is heart rate variability, all on the screen at the same time.
That's data that you can. That's tangible data you can get that will help you look from day to day, or from one part of the day to the other, and to see what level of relaxation you're in. Is that how you use that data? Well,
actually, it's really more immediate. What happens is when you put your fingers on the device, or when you put your finger, it actually works off one single finger with the eView TPS. The other measures through two fingers. You're getting immediate feedback as to, did this thought relax me or stress me? So how do you relax? Well, there's a relaxation program on a CD that you use with the GSR2 that takes you through the process. Then after you've listened to the CD a few times, you can just do it in your mind's eye. You focus on your breathing. You attend to the out breath. So as you're pulling your tummy in, of course, and you're breathing out for 6 seconds, the in-breath just happens by itself. In the background, you're hearing the tone. Your mind wanders, which is what it always does. That's what minds do. And then the the change in tone immediately notifies you, oh, I've lost my focus, I better go back to relaxation. So thoughts will go by like leaves on a brook, and you can just watch those thoughts go by, or you can just attend to your breathing. And some people are calling it mindfulness now. There's a very interesting book written by a Harvard University professor in a Kazan. It's published by Wiley Press, and people can, clinicians are incorporating biofeedback into their practice by actually following her instructions on her book. It's called let me see, Hannah Kazan, Khazan, and you can Google it. The Practical Guide to the Clinical Use of Biofeedback, Integrating Powerful Mindfulness Techniques. That's Clinical Handbook of Biofeedback, a step-by-step guide for training and practice with mindfulness. So it's a process more than knowing, oh, I'm more stressed now than I was this morning or last night. So you're not looking for the absolute level. You're looking for the process of going through a relaxation exercise and then using visualization to practice your sport. You know, remember when you first signed your name? It took you probably about 30 seconds to, round out each letter of your name. But now you fire it off in about a second or two, right? It's called the myotatic unit. So when you're kicking the ball that you've kicked 10,000 or 100,000 or 500,000 times, that's a myotatic unit firing off. When you visualize yourself doing that myotatic unit fires. Think of it. How many times can you actually kick that ball physically versus mentally? Or even more importantly, how about that golf swing? You can see the people take a practice swing before they actually hit the ball. But how about when you're standing there and you're addressing the ball and then you're mentally hitting it 10, 20, 30 times, just mentally, because that's firing off those myotatic units so that you can actually practice with them.
So it's the mental repetitions, and in your mind, as I understand it, doesn't really know the difference between the actually doing it or mentally doing it in deep relaxation. So you really are getting more and more repetitions from the mental side, which is really what controls the body in the first place anyway. Is that correct?
Precisely. But the necessary precondition is deep relaxation. If you're in a normal waking state, we saw from our work with the biathletes that had just the constant tone, they had not relaxed, and therefore they hadn't entered that let's say, self-hypnotic state, or whatever you want to call deep relaxation, and therefore they weren't reprogramming themselves, which is what happens when you enter a deep state of relaxation. So that's why the actual process of getting feedback is so powerful. It's because you can learn how to do something. In fact, you can learn how to do something you haven't ever done. For example, when Nori taught me how to play tennis, well, I hadn't held a racket for about 15 years. And let's just say I was pretty close to pathetic. And he says, look, you better watch some TV. Watch Connors and McEnroe. That was the era that I was in. And for me, that wouldn't work because these guys jumped into the air when they served. But Bjorn Borg, he kept his feet on the ground. So I used to visualize. I used to really pay an amazing amount of attention to his serve, and that's when I got up and I played with Nori the first time. He said, "No, wait! I'm going to put a tennis ball can in the corner. I want you to hit it." And I laughed. I thought, hey, I'll be lucky just to get it over the net. He just barked at me, visualize. So, he was 5 years the middleweight boxing champion in the military. So I followed his instructions, and I hit the can. So, I was so unnerved by the experience, I don't think I could have repeated the entire match. But there's many hundreds of elite sports psychologists now using our system, and it's now no longer kind of, a rare thing. Being an AC Milan, Chelsea FC, and the Vancouver Canucks, it's we're at the peak. Half of the successful Olympic medalists in Vancouver from Canada, we got 14 gold medals. The United States, Russia, and Norway are in the club of 13 gold medals in the Winter Olympics, but Canada's all alone with 14, and about half of them were trained by sports psychologists Penny Wertner, Dr. Pierre Beauchamp, and Ray and Nicolina Pavlov. A whole bunch of elite sports psychologists have worked with these athletes to be able to come up with that performance. They performed it 10,000 times, right? But
right.
Now's the time that counts. But no pressure. There's only a couple of billion people watching, and you're either going to be the hero or the GOAT. But there's no pressure, right? So
right.
This is really a huge side of peak performance is using mental skills to be able to perform when it counts.
All right. Now, the last skill you mentioned was be positive, I think. Or I think you said don't beat yourself. Be your best friend. Being your own best friend.
Well, what's interesting, I think it's Dr. Eric Pepper used to make the point of, you miss your shot and you replay that over and over in your mind. You're so annoyed with yourself. It was only worth a couple of $1 million. We won't go there. Anyway, most of us are playing for nickels, not for that kind of stuff. But it's just when you have a flaw, a fault, chances are, or a fall, you replay that fall over and over and over again. What are you doing? You're rehearsing to make that happen over and over again. What you want to do is just visualize perfection. So that's the whole point, is always visualize it perfectly. Jack Donahue, the coach of the Canadian Olympic basketball team for 20 years, said, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So you have to use perfect visualization. And that, by the way, is what Dr. Eric Pepper used with that weightlifter, the 47-year-old who set a world record and the personal best in weightlifting.
Now, you've given some tremendous examples about Olympic athletes and professional athletes using biofeedback, but I can see where the competitive advantage is so important, because the stakes are so high in the Olympics. Like you said, there's like a billion people watching, or a professional athlete where it's millions of dollars on the line. But what about the aging athlete and the weekend warriors in their 40s, 50s, and older? How can they use mental training? Or should they just kind of hang it up because they're over the hill?
Well, I was going to tell you about Eric talking to about 300 psychologists, sports psychologists, coaches and trainers, Olympic trainers in Tokyo, and he had Miss Ito in the front aisle, and he asked if he could put an EMG electrode. EMG measures muscles on her forearm, and she said sure. And he had sequential translations, so they didn't have headphones. So after he spoke in English, they repeated in Japanese. So he had to pause after every sentence to have it repeated in the other language. And so he said, just relax completely. And so her hands were just resting on the armrest. And he says, okay, I want you to visualize your swing. So Miss Ito, the Tiger Woods of women's golf, you saw a huge spike from floor to ceiling, like 3 stories high, of the EMG trace as she visualized. And then it was repeated in Japanese, and there was no movement in the trace. So Eric asked, did you do the visualization when you heard it in English, in Japanese, one or the other, or both? And she replied, no, I only did it in English because I understood the instructions, and that by that time it was over. So there was an enormous gasp from the audience when they understood that even when she was completely motionless, that you could see her visualization clearly. So what Eric did was he used that visualization and EMG on this Jo Aita, A-I-T-A, if people want to Google it, J-O, and her last name, A-I-T-A. She was 46 years old, and she set a world record in her age class. She was 58 kilos, and she lifted 71 kilos in the snatch and 86 in the clean and jerk. And it was 3 kilos over her best record to that date. So it just shows that, she only started when she was in her mid-30s, weightlifting. So it just shows that it's not age dependent. We're as old as we only age one day at a time. So think back to when you were 23 and when you're skiing or doing whatever your sport is, and enjoy the moment, be in the moment, and realize that when you get relaxed and go visualizing yourself skiing perfectly like whoever your hero is, those skills will transfer to the mountain, and that you'll actually be better at whatever your sport is.
Well, that's fascinating, because I've heard many other similar examples of where the event or the game was won because of the mental training, because of their mental approach and their mental preparation. And I guess that would apply if it's good enough for Olympic athletes and professional athletes, that anyone that wants to improve the performance can utilize these skills and engage in a process of relaxation using biofeedback. Now, when it comes to biofeedback and mental training, there's a lot of information out there, but there's also a lot of misinformation. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people may have about biofeedback and mental training?
Eric likes to make this point. When the bus breaks down with the U.S. Olympic rhythmic gymnastic team that he trained in the mid-'80s. By the way, if your listeners go to www.bfe.org, that's the Biofeedback Federation of Europe, bfe.org, you can see his study that he did with the U.S. Olympic rhythmic gymnastic team using GSRs. And he would say, when the bus breaks down and they have a few hours less to train, what do they cut? Always the mental. So it's the first thing to be dropped, and there isn't sufficient focus on the mental, and there isn't sufficient use of psychophysiology or biofeedback during the mental, so that you can't just do your mental training and expect that without relaxation that it's going to work. And what we can't understand is, how is it possible that we're so in the electronic age and that we actually think that, no, we don't really have to measure, because really measurement is, it was William Thomas, Lord Kelvin, who lived from 1824 to 1907. To measure is to know. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. it's a kind of a very fundamental skill that really can be enhanced by a very, very simple tool. These things cost under $75, and for the simplest ones, and without actually getting feedback, you really don't know if you're improving. Mindfulness is kind of a huge wave of interest in it. And it was very interesting taking Ina Kazan's course at the Biofeedback Federation of Europe, where she taught a 2-day course in mindfulness about how to integrate the biofeedback techniques and how it can enhance the process. So people say, I can tell, from the response of my patient. If you're not measuring, you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, how do you know where you want to go? So we really encourage people to look into the AAPB, the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, or the AASP, the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. AAPB is the Association for Applied Psychophysiology and Biofeedback. Both of them are .org.
So those are some great resources for people that really want to get more information. Before we wrap up, is there, if there's a parting thought you could share with our listeners about if they're thinking about using biofeedback and mental training, what advice would you give them?
Put your hands on one. If you go to www.gsr2, that's the number 2.com, that'll take you to the same website as Thought Technology. By the way, it ends in a GY. THOUGHTECHNOLOGY.com is our website, and there's a whole bunch of programs. Actually, there's a dozen: stress control, stop smoking, sleep well, weight control, taking tests, public speaking, breathing for health, flying, relax, just say no for alcohol and chemical dependency, sex tune-up, and of course, the mind over muscle. It's really about being your best friend. Give yourself a break. Use a tool that'll teach you how to relax. And these 12 programs are from leading clinicians from major medical institutions in the United States. And the science of the mind is maturing. And we all have a computer in our pocket called your smartphone. And now you can actually watch yourself on your own smartphone and be your own best friend.
Wow. Well, Lawrence, I want to thank you so much for sharing the background, the specific details and examples you gave, because, when we think about fitness, most people, the first thing they think about is just the body. They don't think about the mental side of that and how the mind drives the body. And that you gave some great examples and great tools that people can use to get the most out of their body so that they can be mentally and physically fit for as long as they want to. So, again, I want to thank you so much for sharing it and being with me today.
Thanks so much for your interest. It's been fun.
You've been listening to Never Too Late for Fitness Radio, hosted by Phil Ferris. To learn more about the guests or resources on our show today, or to listen to past episodes, go to nevertoolateforfitness.com.